all, welcome to CSS series. This is Ashwati from DRB. So we're going to discuss the Great Revolt of 1857, which is also known as Sepoy Mutiny or the First War of Independence or the First Struggle for the Independence. It has many names associated with it. So we're going to discuss all the causes and the significant reasons that led to this Great Revolt of 1857. One thing for sure is that there wasn't a single reason or a significant reason that led to this Great Revolt of 1857. This was actually a cumulative effect or a cumulative causes that led to this Greatest Revolt of 1857. So we're going to discuss all the concepts and causes that led to this Greatest Revolt of all the times, which is the Revolt of 1857. The first cause being the economic reasons or the economic causes. This was the most prominent or the basic reason that everyone had in respect to who they were, whether they were the zamindars or the kingsmen or the peasants or even the sepoys. Everyone had a discontent on the basis of economic crisis. That is, the very economic fabric of India was destroyed and corrupted because of the invasion or the policies of the British expansionisms. So the first reason is Permanent Settlement Act of 1793. This was passed by Lord Cornwallis. He was a viceroy of that time, and this act indicates that, if you remember, the East India Company received the Diwani rights, that is the right to collect tax and have imposition of revenue through the Battle of Buxar. But the problem was that, the East India Company, they didn't have an idea or they didn't know how to collect the tax. Suppose in India, here the income tax is imposed, I guess, only about 3% of the total population. So these East India Company officials or the administration, they didn't have a single iota of how to collect taxes from these people. They didn't know how to collect tax. On the basis of what should they consider, what are the criterions should be kept in mind for the collection of taxes. So just because they were clueless, lots of trial and error methods were imposed during those phases, and at the end, a permanent solution, which is the Permanent Settlement Act of 1793, was passed on by the Lord Cornwallis. And according to this act, zamindars are to be realized as the owners of the land. If you remember, zamindars were the middlemen or the tax collectors for the Mughal Empire or even the empires before. So with this Permanent Settlement Act, zamindars were given total permission, or they were recognized as the real owners of this land. It doesn't matter who the land belongs to or to whom this land were. Zamindars had the complete or the legal authority and the legal rights of the land. He could even sell off the land if he doesn't like it. So that was the problem that arose. So the basic problem was that, the peasants or the farmers, they became landless. So these peasants essentially became the landless farmers or the landless peasants. So now they have to toil in the lands of zamindars and have to pay taxes, which is double the amount. There were many policies for the tax collection. Apart from this is Rayatwari or Mahalwari. In some cases, there were at least upon till 60% were imposed as tax. So these were like too much or like a burden for these peasants. They couldn't pay up 60% from the profit, because during those periods the profit was very negligible, because during those periods people totally dependent on the climate or the irregular flooding of the rivers or even the rainfall. So they didn't have a proper irrigation facilities, and many other concepts or many other reasons were there, like perishing of all the farm fields and insect or the locust attacked. So many reasons were there. So even if they had a proper yield or if they could make a decent amount of profit, heavy imposition of tax was imposed upon them. And according to the Permanent Settlement Act, whatever the tax collected amount, suppose 50% of the profit amount is the tax collected, it had to be divided into 11 parts. So just imagine 11 parts to be divided among the tax. So that means, or that implies, that the tax collected from them was very high. So that is the general implications of it. So since it was divided among 11 parts, 10th of the 11 parts were belonged to the Britishers, and 1/11th of the tax collected goes to the zamindars. So the problem for zamindars were that, suppose, they didn't have a good yield or a good profit wasn't generated. According to the Permanent Settlement Act, if the zamindars failed to pay up the tax collected or failed to pay up a certain amount as the tax, the land will be seized by the government, which is the East India Company. So these zamindars will become landless. So there were many issues in these policies, and many people had to suffer. Many people succumbed into the pressures and policies, and the people who were at the greatest disadvantage was the peasants and the zamindars. Zamindars not so much, but the peasants, they were highly at the risk. And what happened ultimately was that since the peasants understood on the inside that they couldn't garner much of profit or much of revenue couldn't be collected from this, they started changing their profession, because their land was taken over by the zamindars, so they don't have lands. And also, if they make profit from that, almost 40 or 50% will be collected as tax. So they didn't find or a reason to keep on doing the same profession. Since they changed the occupation or the profession they changed, the zamindars, they couldn't pay up the tax since there were no farmers to do work in their lands. So ultimately what happened was that so many lands or so many amounts of lands were confiscated by the British government. So this what resulted in discontent among the zamindars and the peasants. And the third person who had to suffer because of the economic crisis were the artisans and the handcraftsmen. You must have heard that these handcrafted works are very expensive compared to all the machine-made goods and all. Like for example, all these famous designers, they say that our products are handcrafted. Each threads are handcrafted by each artisans. So it is essentially understood that these handcraft goods and services very expensive compared to the finished products or machine-made goods of the Britishers. So they had the Britishers, or they had the government, the British government, as a rival or as a competition in the market. So that was the main reason for the artisans. And second reason is that all these princely states, all these kingdoms was taken over or annexed by this British government. So the artisans lost their patronage, which is the main source of income. And the third reason was that, artisans, they understood, okay, they don't have a place in Indian market. So what these artisans or the craftsmen understood is that, okay, fine, they don't have a place in the market. So what they did was that they decided to export all these goods and services to outside or to the foreign nations, because they have seen that these Britishers exporting and importing goods from here. So they thought even they could export. But these policies and stringent strategies by the East Indian Company completely discouraged them and acted as a roadblock for these artisans and craftsmen. These extensive policies and restrictions discouraged these craftsmen drastically to export all these products. And we can find that, or we can observe that during those phases, during those periods, the imports was surplus in accordance with the export. The export was considerably very low, and the exports they had was the exports done by the British government. For example, cotton is an indigenous crop or a raw material of India. So what these Britishers do is that they export these raw materials, which is cotton, to their homeland, which is London or Britain, which leaves that the artisans, they don't have any raw materials for them to work. So all these exported goods or the exported cotton are being finished in or being refined into other products like clothes and any other materials, and they are being imported back. So it's like they're draining lots of from here, draining the resources and bringing back into finished products and posing a threat to the existing craftsmen and artisans. So this was like the biggest problem, and it totally shattered the economic stability of those people during those times. And India, before the advent of Britishers, we stood among the second highest people with maximum contribution of GDP. But after the Britishers opening up their market, huge competition was there in India. So that was the reason why we fell in terms of economic stability. So this was the first reason which led to the uprisal. That is, even though sepoy or the problems among the sepoys was the reason which triggered the mutiny, but these people, like the people from a mass society, that is the zamindars, the peasants, the artisan and craftsmen, they went along with the mutiny because even they were sufferers at the hands of Britishers. So this economic causes was the main cause that the revolt of 1857 turned out to be a success to a large extent. But it wasn't a successful revolt because at the end, the Britishers were able to overpower the mutiny. So we'll discuss that in the later period. But today's episode will discuss all the economic factors which led to the revolt.